The book was in the wrong place. Mira Halvin noticed on her second circuit of the reading room, the way one notices a step missing a stair walked 1,000 times. The book was on the low shelf beside the window, and it should have been 3 rows up between the green spines and the gray. She had shelved it herself that morning. She had a system. The system did not put that book on the low shelf. She crossed to the window and lifted the book down. It was a thin volume of Starfolk lullabies, printed on the same cheap paper as the ration menus. She had bought a dozen copies because the small alien children sometimes liked to hold a book they could not yet read, the way other children liked to hold a stone or a cup. She put the book back where it belonged and walked on. By the end of her circuit, the book was on the low shelf again. Mira stopped. She did not turn it once. The reading room was empty. The schoolhouse was emptying too. The 11th bell siren had gone 20 minutes ago, and the last of the older children were filing out through the long covered walk to the dormitory blocks. The shadows in the room were the long, slanted shadows of late afternoon on Tesselar, where the local sun set in a sequence of 3 weak reds and a green flare, and then was gone for the night. She turned slowly. The small one was sitting cross-legged on the reading mat in the corner, the smallest one, the one the Bureau had assigned to her dormitory 4 weeks ago, with a chart and a name and almost nothing else. Pell. Species Q. A Ventari foundling, pale blue skin, pointed ears, white hair the color of a thin moon, eyes the color of honey held up to a candle. Age unknown. Ventari foundlings came in without ages, because the Ventari did not measure their young in months until the young could ask to be measured. The chart had said only small. The chart had said only quiet. Pell was looking at the book on the low shelf. Mira did not move. She watched Pell. Pell did not blink. Pell did not lift a hand. Pell did not lean forward. Pell only looked. And the book on the low shelf sat exactly where Mira had not put it. Pell, Mira said. Pell's honey eyes moved from the book to Mira slowly, the way a small animal's eyes move when it is deciding whether you are a problem. That book belongs on the green shelf, Mira said. She kept her voice level. 3 rows up. Pell looked at the green shelf. Pell looked at the book. The book did not move. Did you put it there? Mira said. Pell's mouth, a small, careful mouth, did not open. After a long moment, Pell looked back down at the mat. Mira crossed the reading room. She crouched. She did it the way she had learned to crouch for the small ones, slowly, both knees, hands resting open on her thighs, eyes lower than the child's eyes if possible. Pell did not look up. It's all right, Mira said. I'm not angry. I am only asking. A small hand came up. It pointed with one careful finger at the book on the low shelf, then at the window, then at Pell's own small chest. You wanted to look at it, Mira said. By the window, because the light is better there. The honey eyes lifted. Pell nodded once. All right, Myra said. All right, you may take a book down to look at it. You only have to ask me, and I will hand it to you. Will you ask me next time? Pell nodded again. Pell's small face was solemn. Pell's small face was always solemn. Mira had not seen the child smile in 4 weeks. Good, Mira said. She stood. She did not put the book back. She left it on the low shelf, where Pell had wanted it. She crossed to her desk, sat down, opened the log, and entered in her neat librarian's hand. Pell V requested access to L12, Stellar Lullabies. Granted. She did not enter because she did not yet have a word for it. The book had been placed on the low shelf by a child who had not crossed the room. She watched Pell out of the corner of her eye for the rest of the hour. Pell sat on the mat with the patient stillness of a child who has learned very early that the safest face is no face at all. At 12th bell, Mira walked Pell to the dormitory block, her hand light on the back of Pell's small shoulder. The bureau matron at the door took Pell without a word and made a tick on her tablet. Mira walked back to the library in the dusk. She did not put the book of lullabies back on the green shelf. Nobody knew. The next morning, the book was on the green shelf again. Pell had not been to the library yet. Mira lifted the book down, walked to the window, and set it on the low shelf in the slant of morning light. When Pell came in at second bell with the small ones for reading hour, Pell looked at the low shelf and did not look at it. Pell sat on the mat. Pell folded small hands in a small lap. Pell waited. After the other children had filed out, Mira knelt by the mat. It's there for you, Mira said, whenever you want it. Pell looked at the low shelf for a long time. Then Pell looked at Mira. Then Pell put out one small careful hand, palm up, and waited. Mira fetched the book. She put it in Pell's hand. Pell held it as though it weighed more than a book. Pell did not open it. Pell only held it and looked at the cover, and after a while, Mira would remember this for the rest of her life, more clearly than her own wedding day. Pell pressed the closed book against the side of her small face and held it there, the way another child might hold a doll. "It's yours," Mira said. "For as long as you want it, we have more." A small sound came out of Pell. It was not quite a word. It was not quite a sigh. It was the sound a small thing makes when something has, very quietly, been given to it. That night, the duty matron sent Mira a message on the schoolhouse net. "Dormitory row C, bunk 14, returned from library with an authorized item, book L12. Please collect." Mira walked the long covered walk to the dormitory in the green dark. The covered walk smelled of wet stone and the cheap soap the schoolhouse used. On the floors, she rang at the dormitory door. The matron, a stocky bureau woman named Karsh, whom Mira had known for 2 years and never liked, opened it and held out the book without looking at Mira. "They aren't to take books to the dorms," Karsh said. "You know that." "It was a loan," Mira said. "I signed for it. It's against the regs. It's against your regs." Karsh's face did not change. "It's against the regs," she said. "Take it." Mira took the book. Behind Karsh, in the long blue light of the dormitory, Mira could see the rows of small bunks, and in the fourth row, in bunk 14, a small shape sitting up on the edge of the mattress, hands folded in a small lap, watching the door. Pell. Pell was looking at the book in Mira's hand the way a child looks at a parent walking away with a coat the child needs. "I'll bring it back tomorrow," Mira said to Pell, past Karsh's shoulder. "You will bring it back to the library and leave it there," Karsh said. Mira did not answer. She turned and walked back through the green dark. In her quarters, she set the book on her own table, beside her tea, and sat looking at it for a long time. She thought about the way the book had been on the low shelf when she had not put it there. She thought about the way Pell had held it against the side of her small face. She thought about the way Karsh had said the regs. The bureau ran the dormitories. The bureau ran the chart on every child. The bureau ran the placements and the reassignments, and the wing of the building Mira was not allowed into, where the bureaucratic decisions about a child's future were made, on Tuesdays, by a panel of 3. The library belonged to the schoolhouse, and the schoolhouse belonged, in the technical sense, to the relief charity that had built it after the war. But the children did not belong to the schoolhouse. The children belonged to the bureau. Mira had always known that. Mira had always told herself it was a paperwork distinction, and the children's actual days were her days. The book on her table, with the matron's regs around it, suggested otherwise. She put the book in her bag. In the morning, she took it back to the library, and she put it back on the low shelf by the window, and she let it sit there in the slant of morning light. When Pell came in at second bell with the small ones, the book was there. Pell looked at it. Pell did not lift it. Pell only looked, the way a child looks at a meal on a high counter she has been told she may not have. After reading hour, Mira walked the small ones back to the dormitory. She did not let Pell carry the book. She went back to the library alone. The book was on the low shelf when she left. When she returned an hour later, she had been at the dispensary, signing for a delivery of pencils. The book was gone from the low shelf, and it was on her desk, in the center of her blotter, with one of her own paper bookmarks in it at a page Mira had not marked. Mira sat down slowly. She turned to the marked page. It was a lullaby in the Ventari mode. It was the third lullaby in the book. The page was clean. There was no fingerprint on it, no smudge, no sign that a hand had touched it. The bookmark was a strip of plain paper Mira used to mark her own returns. There were 40 such strips in a tin on the corner of her desk. The tin was closed. There was no child in the room. She read the lullaby. It was a short one. It was the song a Ventari mother sang, the book's footnote said, when she had to leave the child for the night and could not promise she would come back by morning. It was not a song that comforted. It was a song that told the child the mother had known the Count and had walked into the cold anyway because the Count had to be honored, and that the child was to keep itself warm by remembering the Count. The footnote said the song was sung very rarely now, only in the foundling houses, where the children were the ones who would have to remember the Count for themselves. Mira closed the book. She set the book on the low shelf by the window. She sat at her desk and put her hands flat on the blotter and looked at the door. The door did not open. No one came in. The book did not move from the low shelf. She did not know whom she would have told, even if she had been willing to tell anyone. The bureau would have read it as a defect. The bureau read defects as reasons for reassignment. That night, alone in her quarters, with the book she had finally allowed herself to bring home, Mira read every lullaby in it, in order. The third was the worst. The 7th was kinder. The 11th was almost a joke, a Ventari mother teasing a child about the Count, telling the child that the mother had counted wrong on purpose, that the mother had taken the long way home to give the child a story to tell. Mira read each lullaby aloud quietly to her tea. She did not know whether anyone heard her. She suspected after the third that someone did. In the morning, she went to the library early. She placed the book on the low shelf. She fetched the schoolhouse roster from the office and crossed Pell's name with her finger. Pell V. Ventari Foundling. Bureau Code 31 LO. The 31A meant unplaceable. The LO meant the child had not been adopted out in the standard window. Mira had seen the codes 100 times. She had never thought about what they meant for the child. The 31A children were the ones who went to the panel. She crossed to the long room behind the library, which she was not supposed to use, and opened the supply cabinet and took down a sheet of the heavier paper the relief charity used for its own correspondence. She wrote in her neat hand a request for a custodial reassessment of 1 Pell V, Bureau Code 31 LO, on the grounds that the named librarian, M. Halvin, had observed the child in a state of educational engagement consistent with placement on the schoolhouse roll, rather than the unplaceable roll. She signed it. She put it in an envelope addressed to the relief charity off on the lower tier. She walked to the postal slot and dropped it in. She did not tell the bureau she had done so. Second bell rang. The small ones came in. Pell came in last, as always, behind the small Karaki twins who held each other's hands all the way to the mat and would not be parted. Pell sat at the edge of the mat. Pell looked at the low shelf. The book was there. Pell did not lift it. Pell only sat. Mira opened the morning's reading aloud. It was a story about a fish that wanted to know the name of the sea. The small ones liked it. Even the Karaki twins, who did not understand much of the common, laughed at the right places because Mira's reading voice did the work. Pell did not laugh. Pell listened with the same solemn small face and watched Mira's mouth move with the patient attention of a child who has decided that the safest thing in the room is the human's voice and is going to keep track of it. At the end of reading hour, Mira closed the book and looked up. The Karaki twins were already on their feet. The other small ones were folding their mats. Pell was still sitting. Pell was looking past Mira's shoulder toward the door. Karsh, the dormitory matron, was standing in the door. Pell V, Karsh said. With me. Mira stood. What is it? Panel review, Karsh said. Bureau request. Pell V is to come to the bureau office at the half bell. On what grounds? On the grounds that a panel review has been requested, Halvin. By whom? By the bureau. Karsh did not look at Pell. Karsh held out one stocky hand. Pell rose slowly and crossed the mat and put a small hand into Karsh's, because that was what Pell had learned to do when an adult held out a hand. Mira opened her mouth to speak, and Karsh, without looking at her, said, Halvin, library. I will come to the office at the half bell, Mira said. I have a statement to make. You may submit a statement in writing. I will be there. Karsh's mouth made the small movement that on Karsh was a smile. As you like, Karsh said, and led Pell out by the small hand, down the long-covered walk into the green afternoon. Mira watched them go. When the door closed, she sat down very carefully on the edge of her desk and put her hands flat on the wood and looked at the low shelf by the window. The book was no longer on the low shelf. The book was on her desk, on the blotter with one of her paper bookmarks in it at the 11th lullaby. The one about the mother who had counted wrong on purpose to give the child a story to tell. Mira closed her hand around the spine. She held the book very tight. She did not feel anything in the room move. She had not seen Pell move toward the desk. She had not seen anyone move. She felt, in the way a person sometimes feels a hand on their shoulder when no hand is there, that a small, careful thing had crossed the room without crossing the room and laid the book exactly where Mira would find it and had marked the page that was almost a joke, because the small, careful thing wanted Mira to remember that the count could be counted wrong on purpose. She put the book in her bag. She put on her coat. She walked in the green afternoon, down the long covered walk and across the central yard and into the wing of the building she was not allowed into. The bureau office was on the second floor. The corridors smelled of the same cheap soap as the dormitories, and also of the harder paper the bureau used, which had a smell of its own, dry, official, like a season nothing grew in. Mira walked past the rows of closed doors with their stenciled numbers and stopped at the door marked Panel Room B. She did not knock. She opened the door. She walked in. There were 3 bureau people at a long table. There was a small empty chair facing them. Karsh stood by the chair, a hand on Pell's small shoulder. Pell was looking at the floor. The bureau person in the middle, a thin woman Mira knew by name, Inspector Veller, looked up. Her face did not change. Halvin, this is a closed review. I am submitting in person. You may submit in writing. I am here. Librarian may speak to a child's roster placement. It is in the relief charter. The librarian may submit in writing. Mira did not move from the door. She did not look at Pell, because she did not want Pell to be looked at by anyone in this room more than Pell already had been. She looked at Inspector Veller and at the two other Bureau people whose names she did not know. On what grounds is Pell V being reviewed? Mira said. On the grounds that her current placement is being reassessed. On what grounds is it being reassessed? Inspector Veller looked at her tablet. On the grounds of a noted anomaly in the dormitory record. What, Halvin? This is a closed review. I am the librarian. I am the only adult on this site who has spent more than 15 minutes with this child in 4 weeks. I am asking on what grounds the child is being reassessed. There was a silence. Inspector Veller looked at the bureau person on her left. The bureau person on her left looked at the tablet and read, in a flat voice, Subject Pell V, observed by Dormitory Matron K. Karsh on the night of the 7th to have returned from library hour with unauthorized item. Book L12. Subject Pell V, observed by Dormitory Matron K. Karsh on the night of the 8th to be sitting upright on her bunk after lights out, looking at the dormitory door. Subject Pell V, observed by Dormitory Matron K. Karsh on the night of the 9th to be sitting upright on her bunk after lights out, looking at the dormitory door. Subject Pell V, observed. She was looking at the door because she wanted the book, Mira said. It is a book. I gave it to her. I took it back when Karsh told me to. The child is being reviewed because she wanted a book. The child is being reviewed, Inspector Veller said, because the dormitory matron has filed 3 consecutive nights of anomalous behavior. The Bureau is required to assess such filings within the standard window. And what is the assessment? The assessment is in progress, Halvin. And what is the panel's recommendation? Inspector Veller looked at the Bureau person on her right. The Bureau person on her right was a heavy man with a face like a bag of flour. He looked at his tablet. He read in the same flat voice. Recommendation. Reassignment from schoolhouse roster to the foundling holding facility on the lower tier, pending placement review at the next quarterly intake. The lower tier facility. Mira knew the lower tier facility. The lower tier facility was the place the 31A children went when no one came for them. It had a roster that did not include reading hour. It had a dormitory that did not include bunks. It was where the small ones went to be unfound, until they were old enough to be assigned to the work crews that the Bureau called integration training, and that the children, when they came back through Mira's library once a year for the literacy review, called the long room. Mira set her bag on the edge of the table. She opened it. She took out the book of lullabies. This is the book she wanted, she said. She set it on the table in front of Inspector Veller. This is the entire grounds of your anomaly. She wanted a book of her own people's lullabies. She is a Ventari foundling. She is in a relief schoolhouse on a moon her people did not choose for her. She wanted a book. I gave her the book. The matron took the book back. The child sat up on her bunk looking at the door because she wanted the book. Inspector Veller did not look at the book. Halvin, I am not finished. The Bureau person on the right opened his mouth. Inspector Veller raised one finger half an inch off the table. The Bureau person on the right closed his mouth. I am the schoolhouse librarian, Mira said. I have been the librarian on this site for 9 years. I am the longest-serving relief charter employee on this moon. I have watched 411 children come through this library. I have watched 260 of them go to placement. I have watched 93 of them go to the lower-tier facility. I have watched the rest pass through the long room. I have signed for every one of them. I have a record. I have a name. I have a relief charter authority. I am invoking the 7-day librarian's hold on the reassignment of Pell Fee under Section 3 of the Relief Charter, on the grounds that the child is in educational engagement with the schoolhouse role. The hold is in effect from this moment. The child returns to the dormitory tonight. The panel may reconvene in 7 days. She did not look at Karsh. She did not look at Pell. She looked at Inspector Veller. Inspector Veller looked at her for a long moment. Then she looked at her tablet. Then she looked at the Bureau person on her left. The Bureau person on her left looked at her tablet, and after a moment said, very quietly, the Section 3 hold exists. I know it exists, Inspector Veller said. It has not been invoked on this site in 7 years, said the Bureau person on the left. I know that too, Inspector Veller said. She looked at Mira. You understand, Halvin, that the Section 3 hold places the responsibility for the child's behavior in your care for the 7 days. Anything the child does in that window, any further anomaly is on your file. I understand, and you understand, Inspector Veller said. that the panel will reconvene on the 8th day, and that the panel's recommendation, if upheld, will not be a recommendation, but a decision. I understand. And you understand that the Bureau, if it judges that the librarian has acted in a manner inconsistent with the relief charter, may file a separate review on the librarian. I understand. Very well. Inspector Veller's mouth did not move. Her eyes did not move. The Section 3 hold is logged. The child returns to the dormitory tonight. The panel reconvenes on the 8th day. Matron Karsh, escort the child back. Karsh's hand on Pell's small shoulder tightened, then loosened. Karsh did not look at Mira. Karsh led Pell out of the panel room. As Pell passed Mira, Pell's small eyes lifted to Mira's face for the first time since the door had opened, and Pell's small mouth, for the first time in 4 weeks, moved. It was not a smile. It was a small, careful thing. It was the smallest movement Mira had ever seen on a child's face. It was the movement a child makes when she has decided, very privately, that the adult in the room is going to be kept. Then Pell was gone, into the corridor with Karsh, and Mira was alone in front of the long table with the book of lullabies in front of her, and 3 Bureau people watching her. She picked up the book. She put it back in her bag. She walked out. In the corridor, with the door closed behind her, she stopped, leaned her shoulder against the wall, and let her breath out. She had not realized how long she had been holding it. She walked back through the green afternoon to the library. The library was empty. She set the book on the low shelf by the window and opened the log. She entered in her neat hand. Pell v. Section 3 hold invoked this date on the grounds of educational engagement. Hold expires 8th day. Librarian acknowledges responsibility. She had bought 7 days and would have to spend them well. The book moved on the low shelf. She did not see it move. When she looked up, it was open at the 11th lullaby, the one about the mother who had counted wrong on purpose. All right, Mira said to the empty room. All right. I am counting. The next morning, Mira went to see the only person on Tesselar she still trusted with a question she could not answer. His name was Doran Selk. He had been the chief medic at the relief school for 16 years and had retired the previous spring to a small allotment on the western slope, where he grew the tough red root the locals called bloodbean, and read his way slowly through the relief charity's 12-volume legal commentary, 1 volume a season. Mira walked the 4 kilometers to his allotment in the cold morning and found him crouched in his garden, among the bloodbean, his back to her, his white hair tied back in the way she remembered. Halvin, he said without turning, it has been a year. Doran, you did not come for a year, and now you are here at first bell. Sit down. Tell me what is wrong. She sat on the low wall of his garden. She told him. Should not edit. She told him about the book on the low shelf. She told him about the marker in the bookmark. She told him about the page that was almost a joke. She told him about the panel, and about Karsh, and about the 7 days. She did not name what she had seen Pell do, because she did not have a word for it. She only described it. Doran listened. He did not interrupt. When she was finished, he stood up slowly, brushed the dirt from his knees, and sat down on the wall beside her. The Ventari, he said. What do you know about them? Almost nothing. A people from the inner systems. Their world was lost in the 3rd decade of the war. Their foundlings come through the relief network with no records and no kin. They are quiet. They are easy to place. She paused. The 31 code is overrepresented among them. They are not, in fact, easy to place. They are easy to register and hard to find homes for. Yes, Doran nodded. And what do you know about what the Ventari are? She looked at him. I do not mean the foundling chart, he said. I mean the Ventari. I mean what makes a Ventari child a Ventari child before the foundling chart was put on them. Do you know what their adults did before the war? They were carriers, I think. Carriers, yes. He looked at the bloodbean for a long time. Carriers of what? Goods. Documents, I don't. Of weight, he said. Of weight. The Ventari were a people whose adults could lift small things across small distances without putting their hands on them. Their gift was small. It was a household gift. It was the thing that let a Ventari mother set the dish on the table from where she was nursing the child, or hand the courier pouch over a fence. It was not a war thing. It was not a powerful thing. It was a small, careful thing the Ventari did for one another, the way another people might pass a cup. The adults could do it across a room. The children could do it across a table until the war. And during the war, Doran said, the Ventari adults discovered, in the way a people discovers a thing when there is nothing else to discover, that the gift could be made larger if the giver did not return. Ventari mothers, in the last year of the war, learn to set their children down on the outbound shuttles, and to stand on the dock, and to lift the shuttle all by themselves, with all of their gift at once, an inch off the dock, until the engines caught. They did not survive the lifting. The shuttle launched. The child got to the relief net. Almost all of the Ventari foundlings in the charity's care today were lifted onto a shuttle that way. Their mothers were on the docks. Their mothers stayed there. Mira did not say anything. The children carry the gift too, Doran said. Small household, across a table, across a room. If the child has been alone for long enough that the gift has had time to grow, they do not mostly know they are doing it. They learn very young that the gift is a thing the adults around them will punish. They learn to do it only when they are alone, and only with small things, and only for reasons they cannot say aloud. Books, Mira said. Books, dishes, blankets, the cup of water by the bunk. The thing they want and cannot ask for. The thing they have learned to ask for in the only language they were given by mothers who lifted shuttles. Mira looked down at her hands. She remembered the book on the low shelf by the window. She remembered the bookmark in the 11th lullaby. She remembered the small, careful mouth moving as Pell was led out of the panel room. Doran, she said, the Bureau wants to send her to the lower tier facility. Yes, I have 7 days. Yes, what do I do? Doran looked at her for a long time. Then he stood up. He brushed his knees again. He walked into his small hut. He came back out carrying a thin folder tied with a green cord. He sat down on the wall beside her again. He untied the cord. This is the Ventari section of the Relief Charity's 12-volume legal commentary, he said. It is a thin section. I have read it 3 times. It contains, among other things, a clause that says that a Ventari child, if she can be identified as Ventari by a registered witness in the presence of a bureau panel, is the legal heir of any Ventari adult who lifted a shuttle to her benefit, and that the Ventari estate, including all uncollected reparations from the lost world, descends to her. There is a reparations fund. It is administered by the Relief Charity. It is by Relief Charter law a fund the Bureau cannot touch. A Ventari child with a registered guardian and an identified estate is not a 31A. A Ventari child with a registered guardian and an identified estate is a citizen of the Relief Charter, with full schoolhouse roll standing, and the Bureau may not reassign her. Mira looked at him. You have 7 days, Doran said. You will need a registered witness. You will need to identify her by a Ventari marker the Bureau does not have on file. You will need a guardian of record who is willing to sign for her. And you will need to present all of it to the panel on the 8th day, with the Relief Charity seal on the paper. I will be your witness. I am a registered Relief Charter medic. The Ventari marker is in the marrow. I have the kit. The guardian of record is your problem, Halvin. I will be the guardian of record, Mira said. You are unmarried. You are a Relief Charter employee. The charter permits it. You will sign for her for life. I will sign for her for life. Doran looked at her. After a long moment, he nodded. Then we have a week to do a thing that has not been done on this moon in 11 years, he said. I suggest we begin. They began. The first day, Mira walked Pell to the library at 2nd bell and did not let her out of the library until 12th bell. She gave Pell the book of lullabies and a stack of paper and a box of pencils and did not tell Pell what she was doing. She watched Pell out of the corner of her eye while she worked at her desk. Pell did not lift the book without asking. Pell asked, with the small hand held out palm up every time. Pell read the lullabies very slowly in the slant of light by the window. Pell drew, with the pencils, small careful shapes that Mira, on inspection later, recognized as the floor plan of a Ventari dock. The dock had a small figure standing on it. Mira did not say anything about the drawing. She put it carefully in a folder. In the evening, she walked Pell back to the dormitory and handed her to Karsh and did not say anything to Karsh, and walked back through the green dark to her quarters and sat at her own table with the Relief Charity's 12-volume legal commentary, which she had borrowed from Doran in 2 trips and read. The second day, Doran came to the schoolhouse with his medic's kit. He found Mira in the library. He did not look at Pell, who was on the mat by the window with the book of lullabies. He set the kit on Mira's desk. He took out a small silver needle and a small glass tube. He took out a registered Relief Charter medic's form. I will need her hand, he said. I will need her permission. I will not take it without her permission. Halvin, you will ask her. Mira knelt on the mat. She took Pell's small hand in hers. She showed Pell the needle. She showed Pell the tube. She explained what they were for, in the simplest words she had. She told Pell that the medic needed to take a very small amount of blood from the tip of Pell's smallest finger, and that it would hurt for a moment like a pin, and that she did not have to do it if she did not want to, and that nothing would happen to her if she said no. Pell looked at the needle. Pell looked at the tube. Pell looked at Mira. Pell put her smallest finger out, palm up. Doran worked quickly. He pricked the finger. He drew the drop. He put it in the tube. He sealed the tube. He held the tube up to the light, briefly, and his face changed in the way Mira had not seen his face change in 9 years of knowing him. "Calvin," he said quietly. "She is Ventari. She is fully Ventari. She is not a mixed foundling. She is a full-blooded Ventari child of the line that was on the dock at Visrator in the last year of the war. The marker is unmistakable. I will sign it." He signed the form. He set the form on Mira's desk. He put the tube in the kit and the kit on the desk. He looked at Pell, who was looking at her finger with the small, solemn face. "That was very brave," he said to Pell in common. And then he said the same thing in the Ventari mode he must have learned in his 16 years at the schoolhouse. And Pell looked up at him with the honey eyes and nodded. Once, very gravely, he left. Mira put the form in the folder with the drawing of the dock. The third day, she went to the relief charity office on the lower tier and filled out the Guardian of Record paperwork. She signed the page that said she would sign for the child for life. She signed the page that said she would not relinquish the child to the Bureau for any cause short of the child's own consent at the age of legal voice. She signed all the pages without hesitation. The registrar, a tired man named Folk, looked at her over his spectacles when she had finished and said, "Calvin, 9 years I have signed your routine pay forms. This is the first time you have asked for anything for yourself." "It is not for myself," Mira said. "It is," Folko said. He stamped the pages. "Do not pretend otherwise. The relief charter prefers it that way." He sealed the folder with the green seal of the relief charity. He handed it back to her. That night Karsh came to the library after 12th bell with a bureau citation. She did not knock. She set the paper on Mira's desk. "Pell V's blanket was on the dormitory windowsill at lights out," Karsh said, 6 feet from the bunk. "The child did not cross the floor. The night watch confirms it. You will sign." Mira looked at the citation. She did not pick it up. "The Section 3 hold is in effect. Any anomaly during the hold is on the librarian, not the child. The citation is therefore mine. I have received it. Good night, Karsh. You will lose her, Halvin. The panel will eat you. They have eaten librarians before. Good night, Karsh." Karsh walked out. Mira sat for a long time with her hand on the folded citation. She thought about the small, careful gift growing in the dark, learning to lift a blanket 6 feet across a closed room while the night watch was looking at her tablet. She walked the long covered walk and rang at the dormitory door. The night watch was a young bureau cadet named Vass, whom Mira had taught to read 3 years ago in this library. "You did your job, Vass. Listen, if the child does anything in the night that you cannot explain, write it on a piece of paper and bring it to the library, not to the dormitory log. The library log is mine. I will sign for them. I will carry them on my file." Karsh does not read the library log." Vass nodded. "Halvin, the blanket was warm when I found it on the sill. I did not put that in the citation." "I know. Good night, Vass." The fourth day she went to the reparations office, which was in the same building, 2 floors up, and presented the medic's form and the green sealed folder and asked for the Visrator schedule. The reparations clerk, a small woman with a Ventari accent of her own, took the form into a back room and was gone for an hour. When she came back, her face had the look Doran's face had had in the library. She set a thin packet on the counter. "The Visrator schedule," she said. "Pell V is listed. Her mother is on the dock register. Her mother's name is Pell Vi. The schedule has been waiting for her since the last year of the war. There is an estate. It is small. It is enough to keep a child through schoolhouse in the lower university. The relief charity holds it on her behalf. It descends on identification." "Halvin, who identified her?" "Doran Selk. Selk." The clerk's mouth made a small movement. "I will draw up the descent papers. They will be ready in the morning. You will sign for her, and the estate will descend. And the Bureau may, in the words of my own grandmother, go and consider its options." The 5th day Mira walked Pell to the library at 2nd bell and showed her on the table the packet from the reparations office with her mother's name on it, Pell Vi. She did not explain it. She said only, "Your mother's name was Pell Vi. She was on the dock at Visrator. She lifted the shuttle so that you would come here. The schoolhouse has kept the schedule of her name since you arrived. Today I am putting your name with hers on a piece of paper. The piece of paper says that I will sign for you for as long as you need me to. Do you understand?" Pell looked at the packet. Pell looked at the name. Pell put one small finger on the name and held it there. Pell did not say anything. After a long moment, Pell looked up at Mira, and the honey eyes were full of something that was not tears but had the same weight, and Pell nodded. "All right," Mira said. "Then I will sign." She signed. The 6th day she met Doran at the Relief Charity office, and they took the full folder, the medic's form, the Guardian of Record papers, the descent papers, the estate schedule, the Relief Charter seal, to the office of the Relief Charities Standing Council, a slow patient man named Voss, who read the folder for an hour without speaking and then looked up and said, "This will hold. The Bureau will fight it. They will not win. Halvan, you have done a thing that the Bureau prefers not be done. They will write a separate review on you. I know. I will represent you. I have not represented anyone in 4 years. I will enjoy it." On the evening of the 6th day, walking back from Voss's office in the green dusk, Mira found Inspector Veller waiting outside the schoolhouse gate. The inspector was alone. The inspector did not have a tablet. The inspector was wearing a plain coat without the Bureau insignia. "Walk with me," Inspector Veller said. They walked down the slope road past the Bloodbean allotments. Inspector Veller looked at the ground in front of her boots. "Karsh has filed 9 citations on you in 5 days. She wants the panel to read them as a pattern. They are about a child who is not crossing the floor, and a blanket that is warm, and a cup of water by the bunk that the night watch did not pour. I have been in this Bureau 22 years. I know what a Venturi child is. I have signed off on the lower tier reassignment of 41 of them." She stopped walking. She looked finally at Mira. Her face in the green dusk was the face of a tired woman, not the face of an inspector. 41, she said. "I have a count too. I have been counting them the wrong way 22 years. You have, in 7 days, done a thing that I have not done. I am telling you now that the panel will rule for the child on the 8th day. The Bureau will not appeal. The separate review on you will fail. You will keep her. Why are you telling me this here? Because in the panel room I am the inspector. Here I am, a woman walking home from work. I have a Venturi niece. She was 8 when the war ended. I signed her chart as unplaceable. She went to the lower tier. She is in the long room now. She is 23. She does not write. I have not gone to see her. I am telling you this here, Halvan, because if you do not keep this child tomorrow, I will not have anything left to count. I understand you. Good. Go home. The panel reconvenes at first bell." She walked away down the slope road. The green dusk closed over the plain coat, and then she was gone. Mira walked back up the slope to her quarters. He drank her tea, this time all the way down. She went to bed early, and she slept. The 7th day she walked Pell to the library at second bell, gave her the book of lullabies, watched her read in the slant of light by the window, walked her back to the dormitory at 12th bell, handed her to Karsh without a word, walked back to her quarters in the green dark, sat at her table with a cup of tea she did not drink, and waited for the morning. The 8th day she put on her best coat. She put the folder in her bag. She put the book of lullabies in her bag with it. She walked through the green morning to the panel room. Karsh was already there with Pell. Pell was in the small chair facing the long table. Inspector Veller was at the table with the same 2 Bureau people as before. The folder Mira had filed 7 days ago was open in front of Inspector Veller. The Bureau person on the right had his tablet ready. "Halvan," Inspector Veller said, "the Section 3 hold has expired. The panel will now make its decision." Before the decision, Mira said, "I am presenting a relief charter filing." Inspector Veller's face did not change. "Submitted in writing, Halvan. It is in writing." Mira walked to the long table. She set the green-sealed folder on it. She opened the folder. She took out the medic's form. She set it on the table. She took out the Guardian of Record papers. She set them on the table. She took out the descent papers. She set them on the table. She took out the estate schedule. She set it on the table. She took out the Standing Council's cover letter. She set it on the table. She did not sit down. "Pell," she said, "is a full-blooded Venturi child of the Visrator line, identified by registered relief charter medic Doran Selk on the 2nd day of the Section 3 hold. As of yesterday's filing at the reparations office, she is the legal heir of her mother Pell Vi, formerly of the Visrator doc, deceased in the last year of the war. The Visrator estate, held in trust by the relief charity since the year of her arrival, descends on identification, which has now been made. The estate is sufficient to keep her through schoolhouse and the lower university. As of yesterday's filing at the relief charity office, I am her guardian of record under Section 7 of the relief charter with all attendant responsibility. The Standing Council of the Relief Charity, Voss, has reviewed that the filing confirms it. Pell V is not a 31A. Pel V is a Ventari child of the schoolhouse roll with full charter standing, and the Bureau may not reassign her. She set her hands flat on the edge of the table. She looked at Inspector Veller. The panel's decision, she said, may proceed. There was a long silence. Inspector Veller read the medic's form. She read the Guardian of Record papers. She read the dissent papers. She read the estate schedule. She read the Standing Council's cover letter. She set each page down very carefully on the table as she finished it. When she had finished the cover letter, she looked at the Bureau person on her left. The Bureau person on her left looked at his tablet, and after a moment said very quietly, "It is in order." "It is," Inspector Veller said. She looked at the Bureau person on her right. The Bureau person on her right did not say anything. He had the look of a man who has been handed a thing he does not know how to put down. Inspector Veller looked at Pel. Pel was still looking at the floor. The small, careful face had not moved. "Pel V," Inspector Veller said. "The Bureau acknowledges your identification as a Ventari child of the Visrator line. The Bureau acknowledges the descent of your estate. The Bureau acknowledges your placement by Guardian of Record M. Halvin on the schoolhouse roll. The panel's recommendation is withdrawn. The matter is closed." She closed the folder. "Matron Karsh," she said, "you may return to the dormitory. Pel V will be collected from the library by her Guardian of Record at 12th bell, as on every other day." Karsh's mouth made the small movement that on Karsh was a smile, except this time the smile was the wrong way up. Karsh turned and walked out of the panel room without looking at anyone. The door clicked shut behind her. "Halvin," Inspector Veller said, "a separate review will be filed on you. You understand this?" "I understand." "The review will fail. You understand this too?" "I had hoped so." Inspector Veller looked at her. After a long moment, she nodded. It was the smallest possible nod. It was the nod a bureau inspector gives very privately to a librarian who has used the relief charter the way it was meant to be used. "You may collect the child," Inspector Veller said. Mira walked around the long table. She knelt by the small chair. She held out her hand, palm up, the way Pel had learned to hold a hand out, palm up, when she wanted a thing. Pel looked at the hand. Pel looked at Mira's face. The small, careful mouth moved again. This time it was almost a smile. Pel put her small hand in Mira's. Mira closed her fingers around it. She stood. She walked Pel out of the panel room, down the corridor, through the central yard, along the long covered walk, into the library. She set Pel on the mat by the window in the slant of morning light. She fetched the book of lullabies from her bag. She put it in Pel's small hand. Pel held the book against the side of her small face the way she had held it the first time. A small sound came out of Pel. This time the sound was almost a word. It was the word for keeper, in the Ventari mode. Mira did not know the word. She would learn it. Mira crossed the room. She sat at her desk. She opened the log. She entered, in her neat hand, Pel V, Section 3 hold closed, schoolhouse roll, full charter standing, Guardian of Record M. Halvin this date. She closed the log. She looked at the low shelf by the window. The book was in Pel's hand. The low shelf was empty. The slant of morning light fell across the empty shelf and the small alien child on the mat, with the book against her face, and Mira sat at her desk in the long quiet of a room she had worked in for 9 years, and watched a small, careful gift do, for the first time in front of her in plain daylight, the small, careful thing it had been doing in secret for 4 weeks. A second book lifted, very slowly, from the shelf by the door. It floated across the room. It came to rest on the corner of Mira's desk, beside her teacup. It was the 11th book in the green row. It was a book of Ventari folk tales. The cover was worn. The page was open at the tale of the mother who had counted wrong on purpose to give the child a story to tell. Mira looked at the book. She looked at Pel. Pel was watching her with the honey eyes over the top of the lullaby book. The small, careful mouth was this time a real smile. "All right," Mira said quietly. "All right, I am counting too." She picked up the folktale. She crossed the room. She sat down on the mat beside Pel. She opened the book. She began to read aloud, slowly in the slant of morning light, with the small alien child leaning against her shoulder, and the room full of the quiet weight of all the small, careful things a small, careful child had been carrying alone for 4 weeks and would not have to carry alone again. Outside, the green morning held. The schoolhouse bell did not ring. The long-covered walk was empty. The dormitories were full of other children, other charts, other small, careful things hidden in the seams of other bunks. Mira knew this. She would think about it tomorrow. Today the book was open. The child was leaning. The light was falling across the page. The count was being counted on. Purpose the right way. She read on. After a while, lifted one small, careful hand and turned the page for her without touching it. Mira did not say anything. Mira only nodded and read the next page and let the child do what the child had been doing for 4 weeks in the dark and was, today, allowed to do in the light. At 6 bells, she closed the book and looked at Pell. Pell was asleep against her shoulder, with the book of lullabies open on her small lap at the 11th page. Mira did not wake the child. She watched the slant of light move across the page, and she thought about Inspector Veller's plain coat in the green dusk, and about Voss's slow, patient face, and about Doran in the blood bean, and about Vass at the dormitory door with the warm blanket she had not put in, the citation, and about folk at the registrar's desk telling her that the relief charter preferred it that way. She thought about all of them by name. She thought about how many of them had been waiting, for years without knowing it, for a librarian with a folder and a Section 3 hold and a small alien child she would sign for life. She did not think about Karsh. Karsh would go on filing citations on other small careful gifts in other dark dormitories, and from now on those citations would land on a desk that had read the Visrator appendix and the Section 7 duties, and would be answered. The library was the desk where the citations would land now. Pell stirred. The small careful mouth made the word for keeper again, almost a whisper. Mira, who did not know the word in the Ventari mode, said back in the only mode she had, "I am here, I am here, I am here." Pell closed her eyes. The book of folktales on the corner of Mira's desk lifted a hand's breadth in the air, hung a moment in the slant of light, and settled back down, gently, on the warm wood. Mira watched it settle. She did not need to say anything. The library knew. The light knew. The small, careful gift, growing, knew. She would have to teach child in the years ahead to keep the gift small in front of strangers, and to let it grow only in front of those who had been counted by name. She would have a long time to teach it. She would have, by the relief charter, the rest of her life. She sat in the slant of light with the child asleep against her shoulder, and did not move until 12th bell. When 12th bell rang, she lifted Pell carefully into her arms, the book of lullabies coming up with the child against the small face, and carried them both out of the library, down the long covered walk, past the dormitory door without stopping, past Karsh's office without looking in, past the postal slot where 7 days ago she had dropped a single envelope, and on, through the green afternoon, to her own quarters, where a small second room had been empty for 9 years and was no longer. She set Pell on the cot in the small second room. She set the book on the pillow by Pell's small head. She drew the blanket up. She watched the small careful chest rise and fall, and the slant of afternoon light through the window onto the wall, where the shadow of the small alien child on the cot looked for a moment very much like another small shape standing on a dock far away, with both hands raised, lifting. Mira closed the door and went to make the child something to eat.